Marianne Faithfull was born on December 29, 1946, in London. Her father, Major Robert Glyn Faithfull, was a British intelligence officer and professor of Italian literature. Her mother, Baroness Eva von Seidlitz, was an Austrian aristocrat who had fled the Nazis and carried with her the old-world charm of Vienna's salons and ballet halls. It was a world of contrasts, aristocratic elegance clashing with military rigidity, and it didn't last. When Marianne was just 6, her parents divorced, setting off a series of changes that would eventually lead her to the stage. She mainly lived with her mother, in a home that felt more like a museum of lost beauty. Evenings were spent listening to opera, reading Proust, and talking about Freud, a cold intellectual atmosphere that made Marianne both crave escape and long to make sense of it all through art. That pull toward drama, nostalgia, and recognition became the engine that drove her into music. By 15, she was performing folk songs in small London cafes, her soft, childlike voice and emotional delivery capturing the attention of anyone who happened to be listening. She might have stayed in that quiet world if not for one lucky break. In 1964, her boyfriend at the time, John Dunbar, took her to a lunch party celebrating the Rolling Stones' new single. There, in the heart of London's art and music scene, she met the band's manager, Andrew Loog Oldham. He was struck by her ethereal presence and saw in her something rare, an angelic voice wrapped in a haunting persona. He offered her a demo on the spot. That moment changed everything. Her first single, As Tears Go By, written by Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Oldham, became her breakout hit. The song had originally been intended for a male voice, but in Marianne's version, it took on a completely different life. The slow waltz rhythm, simple orchestration, and Baroque violin line highlighted the fragility of her voice, turning the track into something quietly devastating. For once, the pop scene wasn't looking at a girl trying to be bold or sexy. Marianne's power came from her vulnerability, and it worked. The single soared to number 9 in the UK and reached number 22 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the US. Just like that, Marianne Faithfull stepped out of the cafes and into the spotlight, not as a pop starlet, but as a haunting new voice of her generation. After the breakthrough success of her debut single, Marianne Faithfull's life quickly turned into a whirlwind, both professionally and personally. In 1965, she released 2 albums at once, Marianne Faithfull and Come My Way, each representing a different side of who she was as an artist. The first was her entry into the pop world. That album featured tracks like Come and Stay With Me and This Little Bird, which solidified her image as a delicate pop diva with a touch of melancholy. Come and Stay With Me, written by Jackie DeShannon, showed Marianne with a bit more vocal confidence, but still anchored in that signature vulnerability. Meanwhile, This Little Bird felt almost childlike, its soft guitar and bright melody painting a picture of a bird in a cage. Singing, yes, but clearly longing for freedom. In contrast, Come My Way was her conscious return to her folk roots. Unlike her pop-leaning singles, this album leaned into traditional English and Scottish ballads. Songs like She Moved Through the Fair and North Country Maid were stripped down, intimate, and carried by little more than acoustic guitar and her natural, unvarnished voice. Here, she sounded like she belonged, not chasing stardom, but honoring the music that shaped her. These tracks reflected not just her musical background, but her deep respect for cultural tradition. That same year, Marianne married her longtime friend John Dunbar. On the surface, it seemed like the next logical step, especially since she was pregnant. But even before their son Nicholas was born in November 1965, the marriage had started to unravel. Marianne would later admit that she simply wasn't ready for the demands of family life. And at the same time, another force had entered her orbit, Mick Jagger. Her relationship with Jagger went far beyond romance. He was drawn to her mysterious elegance. She was captivated by his energy and wild freedom. She wasn't just his partner, she became his muse. Their creative bond ran deep. Marianne introduced Jagger to The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov, which inspired parts of Sympathy for the Devil on the Beggar's Banquet album. You Can't Always Get What You Want, from Let It Bleed in 1969, was said to be about her. Wild Horses and I Got the Blues, both on Sticky Fingers, are also believed to carry her imprint. and Sister Morphine, Marianne co-wrote it herself. Jagger's rock and roll lifestyle had a powerful influence on Marianne Faithfull, but not always for the better. She began experimenting with alcohol and drugs, and from there, things took a darker turn. Her music started to reflect the shift. Songs like Tomorrow's Calling and Is This What I Get for Loving You already carried traces of psychedelia, drawn-out melodies, haunting arrangements, vocals that sounded tired and uncertain. Her voice was changing. It no longer had the airy innocence of her early days. It was heavier now, tinged with pain, weariness, and emotional depth, the voice of a woman on the edge. Then, in February 1967, everything exploded. Marianne was arrested alongside Mick Jagger and Keith Richards during a drug bust at Richards' home in Redlands. According to rock legend, she was found wrapped in nothing but a fur rug, eating a heart-shaped candy. Whether true or not, the story stuck, and the press had a field day. Overnight, she went from a poetic pop princess to a fallen angel, a scandalous femme fatale. Decca dropped her. The public, especially in conservative Britain, turned cold. Things only got worse. In 1969, she suffered a miscarriage, a devastating loss, made even harder by her deepening drug addiction. Her relationship with Jagger began to fall apart. He focused on his career, and Marianne, increasingly seen as a tragic figure, was no longer his muse or equal. She felt lost, isolated, and expendable. After their final breakup in 1970, Marianne all but vanished from public life. Her addiction became all-consuming. She lived rough, sometimes in squats, sometimes crashing with friends, sometimes in shelters. At her lowest, she lost custody of her son, Nicholas, who was raised by John Dunbar's parents. It was a wound she would carry for the rest of her life, often speaking about it with raw guilt and shame. She reappeared briefly in 1973 with the album Dreamin' My Dreams, a collection of country-tinged ballads and acoustic songs. Tracks like The Way You Want Me to Be and I'll Be Your Baby Tonight showed flashes of her old self, but the album came and went with little notice. She wasn't in peak form, her voice sounded worn, and the music felt out of sync with the glam, prog, and psychedelic scene that dominated the era. Then, in 1975, she developed severe bronchitis and permanently damaged her vocal cords. Her soft soprano was gone. In its place emerged something entirely new, a raspy, broken, almost masculine voice. It was the sound of everything she'd lived through, the drugs, the streets, the loneliness. But it was also the beginning of something else. Because it was only by losing everything that Marianne Faithfull found the strength to begin again. Marianne Faithfull began her long road to reinvention in the theater. In 1976, she took the stage as Ophelia in Hamlet, and later in Chekhov's Three Sisters. It wasn't a career comeback, it was survival, a way to reconnect with herself and rebuild a sense of identity. Around 1977, she quietly returned to music, first with a few singles, covers, and small experiments. One of them was Sister Morphine, a song she'd co-written with Jagger and Richards back in 1969, finally performed in her own voice. By then, the punk revolution was reshaping the music world. Suddenly, you didn't have to sound polished, you had to sound real, and Marianne's raw, broken vocals fit the moment perfectly. That voice, scarred by life, had become her strength. The turning point came in November 1979 with the release of Broken English. This wasn't just an album, it was a confession, a cry from a woman who had walked through fire. Musically, it blended post-punk, new wave, and electronic rock. Cold, sharp, modern. It captured the mood of Britain at the time, on the edge of the Thatcher years, drowning in pessimism and unrest. Tracks like the Ballad of Lucy Jordan, Working Class Hero, and the title track Broken English were full of anger, politics, and feminine defiance. But nothing hit harder than Why Do You Do It? An unfiltered monologue of betrayal and humiliation, laced with profanity and fury. Some were shocked, others were transfixed, but no one ignored it. In the early 1980s, she cemented her new identity, the smoky-voiced priestess of post-punk and art rock, with albums like Dangerous Acquaintances, 1981, and A Child's Adventure, 1983. But behind the scenes, her fight with addiction continued and her life remained unstable. Then, in 1987, she stunned critics again with Strange Weather, a haunting album of jazz and blues standards, reimagined through the lens of everything she'd been through. Her voice carried the weight of it all: sadness, wisdom, survival. Through the 1990s, Marianne emerged as something rare in music, not just a survivor, but an icon of resilience. In 1994, she released Faithfull, an autobiography where she laid everything bare: the drugs, the miscarriages, the heartbreaks, the years lost. The innocent muse of the 60s myth, she tore it down herself. Artistically, she kept pushing boundaries. 20th Century Blues, 1996, was her love letter to Cabaret and Kurt Weill. Vagabond Ways, 1999, recorded with Daniel Lanois and Roger Waters, was a mature, reflective work that explored pain, war, and memory. By then, she had stopped chasing mainstream approval. She was making music for those who listened with their hearts. Some say she leaned into her image, the fallen angel who came back from hell, and maybe she did. But she wore it with purpose. Albums like Before the Poison, 2004, with Nick Cave, and Give My Love to London, 2014, were fierce, intelligent, and deeply human. She never softened the truth. Even when health problems mounted, breast cancer, arthritis, and a brutal battle with COVID-19 in 2020, she didn't disappear. In 2021, she released She Walks in Beauty, an album of romantic poetry set to music by Warren Ellis and Brian Eno. Her voice, ragged and ghostly, recited Byron, Keats, and Shelley like someone who had lived every line. Marianne Faithfull's career isn't just a story of reinvention. It's a chronicle of survival, loss, art, and unwavering dignity. She's endured what would break most people: addiction, homelessness, illness, exile. But she never disappeared. She never gave up. Her voice, once delicate, now scorched and elemental, has become a symbol, not of glamour, but of truth. And that's why she's remembered. That's why she still matters.